Welcome to another Ask Arlington. I'm Jay Warren. Springtime brings more than warm, wet weather to North Texas. It also kicks off the start of mosquito season, and the city is working to help residents and visitors be mosquito-free. Health Services Manager Amy Rockhill Carpenter is here to tell us about how you can help us keep the mosquito population down here in Arlington. Amy, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And thanks for all the hard work you do in this effort. I know it is a lot every year. And before we get to some of our resident questions, and we got some really good ones today, I thought you might kind of walk us through our mosquito prevention program that we have here in Arlington.
Sure. So in Arlington, we follow an integrated mosquito management plan, which means that this is a year-long interdepartmental collaboration where we proactively look to larvicide for any areas that might be breeding mosquitoes. We look to reduce, again, those habitats where mosquitoes may breed. And then if we do have an incident where we have a positive mosquito trap, we will respond according to the CDC's protocol for preventing disease.
And all of that has had a big impact on our mosquito population here in Arlington. We've seen the cases of West Nile go down over the past few years, right? Tell us about some of that success.
Yes, that's correct. So as you know, nature is not controllable by any means. And so any given year, we have to stay alert and proactive.
Right.
To make sure that we don't have a big outbreak of West Nile virus. So what we've seen over the past few years with including other departments in this effort is a reduction of human cases and also kind of a stabilization of positive traps in our region.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, as I mentioned, we got some really good questions, so I want to get to some of those from our residents. Our first one comes to us from Christy. She writes, we have a pond in our neighborhood. Will they be spraying here? I really hope so, especially for our children's sake. So if you've got a pond in your neighborhood, how is that handled?
So if you have a pond in your neighborhood, the first thing that I would recommend doing is getting a group together with your neighbors. So it might be a homeowners association. It might just be a group of concerned neighbors that want to get together to make sure that there isn't a litter issue in the pond.
Right.
You can also, with an HOA, contract for lake services or pond services to make sure that you keep a healthy body of water there. The other thing I would recommend is having an aerator in the pond so that there's constantly movement in the water. So what we don't want is kind of a stagnating body of water, but as long as there is an aeration or movement of that water and there are natural predators in that body of water, we're not really going to see a lot of mosquito breeding taking place there. By natural predators, I'm referring to things like dragonflies, frogs, turtles, fish. Those actually eat mosquito larvae and can definitely cut down on your mosquito population.
All right, very good. It's like having a fountain at home. If it's kind of bubbling the water through, you don't have to worry about that as much as if it's just standing stagnant. Yeah. Well, our next question comes to us from Christine. Why don't we spray and deplete the heavy mosquito population here in Arlington? There's a West Nile habitat way too close to those of us in South Arlington.
So this is sort of similar to the previous question asking why we don't spray or if we're going to spray. Our integrated mosquito management plan is specifically targeted towards protecting public health. We don't spray for nuisance mosquitoes, and the reason that we don't do that is because we don't want to create a population of mosquitoes that's resistant to pesticide. So a lot of people hear about in the news this misuse or overuse of antibiotics. Something similar happens when you overuse or misuse pesticides with insects. So by limiting the amount of targeted ground spraying that we conduct to only addressing public health issues rather than nuisance mosquitoes, we're able to ensure that when we do deploy targeted ground spraying, we get the most bang for our buck that way.
Yeah, and you've been doing that with success these past few years, for sure.
That's correct.
Our next one comes to us from June. June writes, do you use a schedule of when spraying will occur? For example, notifying Arlington residents 3 days or 5 days before spraying in a particular area. Do I find the notifications on the Nextdoor app, or will they be posted somewhere else?
Multi-part question
yes,
there.
Yeah.
So we set traps every week. And the trap results come back to us from the Tarrant County Public Health Lab. As soon as we find out those results on Wednesday, we immediately go into our action plan if we have a positive trap. So what that means is we get the results early on a Wednesday, before noon usually, and that evening is when we conduct that targeted ground spray. The reason there's such a fast turnaround time on that is because we want to make sure that we are very proactive in addressing that public health issue. The places where you can find notification about any targeted ground spraying being conducted in any neighborhood in Arlington would be the website and also social media.
So this would be the city's website and the city's Facebook, website. Twitter, Nextdoor, all those top pages.
Yes, exactly. And the city does a fantastic job of pushing that information out just as soon as it's finalized with our plan for approaching that positive trap. The only time when we would not spray on a Wednesday, Thursday night, because we do it back-to-back consecutive nights, would be if there's some type of a holiday event where we want to kind of hold off and not have targeted ground spraying occurring when there's a large outdoor event planned. But typically that's not going to be on a Wednesday, Thursday, so that's why we chose those days to specifically use for targeted ground spraying.
And the weather can also impact it. If you're having heavy rain, let's say Wednesday night, you're not likely to spray that night, right?
So high winds, any type of precipitation, we're not able to do targeted ground spraying. Also temperatures in the low 60s or below, we will not do targeted ground spraying because mosquitoes aren't out on the wing during those temperatures.
It's important to note, though, that if we waited 3 or 5 days, that would be 3 or 5 days longer with the potential of a West Nile problem in a neighborhood, which we could address quickly if we turn that around in just a few hours.
Exactly. The other thing that we try to do, or we do, is deploy static signs through the neighborhood. So every target ground spray area is going to have 10 to 12 static signs placed in strategic areas of kind of high traffic in and out of the neighborhoods. You may also see, or your citizens may also see, these message boards, like digital message boards. But I would not necessarily look for those specifically. I would look for the small static signs and, of course, checking the city's website and social media.
Very good. Our last question comes to us from Jackie. Why doesn't the city start testing and spraying early? She writes, do not feel that the city is proactive, only reactive. We actually have started testing, though, now several weeks before this taping of this show, right?
Correct. So every year we start our trapping and testing in early March. And we continue to do that usually mid-November, first or second week of November, so that we're able to capture any potential West Nile positive that could occur during that period of time. So we definitely don't see a lot of early positives in this area, but we do proactively trap and test early in the season.
Yeah, very good. Well, Amy, thanks again to you and the team for all the work you're doing on this effort. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you at home for sending in those questions. A lot of great questions again this time. That will wrap it up for this edition of Ask Arlington. Tune in next time when we'll answer more of your questions.